Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am going to be sharing with you some grid working that I would say Richard and I experienced this last week. It's all going to be happening really between Arizona and New Mexico. And we went to Roswell, we went to sacred sites, and I had no plans other than I'll tell you how it started, but as when Richard plans a trip, I just go with the flow, and this was the same. So he had been to Albuquerque, New Mexico about 2 years ago during the Hot Air Balloon Festival. And he had planned, or he had wanted us to go together. And so a year ago, he entered this raffle or something where he tried to get us a camping spot for the van, and he won and he got in there, and so we knew this trip was coming for about a year. And I have been to New Mexico. I had just been to Santa Fe before, again before awakening. So I was kind of like, as with all of these trips when they happen, excited, but at the same time, I have so much that I have to do at home. And, and this is normal for me. I don't like being out of my comfort zone until I'm out of it, and then I'm fine. But it's that lead up to get out of my home that I'm just kind of and leaving our animals and the whole thing. It makes me uncomfortable. So we started this trip, which, by the way, wasn't planned because he had scheduled this a year ago, and it was based around the Albuquerque Hot Air Balloon Festival. Happened to be that we would be on our first anniversary was going to happen during this week. So I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. Let's see what we're gonna do. Let's see what happens. So we started and we drove from California to through Arizona, and our first stop was in Tombstone, Arizona. And he had been there before when he was on a motorcycle trip, so he wanted me to see it. And we got there, and the town, it looks like a Western set, but it's actually a real town, and it's not just a set. And, we did some little tours. There's this bar called the Birdcage, which is all in original condition and super interesting, and not the point. But we saw that when we were walking into town, there was this trolley tour that we could take. And so it was going to be I don't know, half an hour away. So we went over and got tickets, and we decided to go on this trolley. And while we're on this trolley, he's pointing out all the oldest buildings in the town, and, talking about the gunfights and whatnot. And we passed this one building, and he's talking about how it's one of the landmarks there. And on the side of it, it says that it's a Freemason building. And that for me was like a wink. And I didn't say anything. I just winked. It was a wink. And I'm going to have a lot of winks as we go forward. And I'm wanting to explain this to you guys so you can understand how things line up and how we're supposed to kind of notice the winks. So what I've noticed through this trip is that when there's something for me to know about, I'll get 3 winks. 3 winks about the same subject. And then when it lands in, I'm like, okay, it was already coming in before it landed. So the Freemasons, that building gave me a wink. And what it felt like is, that's weird. Are we on the 33rd parallel? And that's going to be another theme that's going to carry us through this journey. So of course I grab my phone and I look it up, and no, it's actually below the 33rd parallel. So I'm like, why would they have Freemasons out here? I mean, it's this tiny little no-dunk town. And during the Silver Rush, it was a huge town and it was very populated. But now, I'm just very curious about it. So on this tour, the guide is talking about there's the biggest rose bush that ever existed or in the whole world is in this town. And it came from this woman that came from Sweden, I believe. She carried with her one like stick of a rose bush when they moved to the US. And when they were staying in this hotel, which had a huge courtyard, and she decided to plant it there. And this is back in the 1800s. And basically now it's like, and I'm gonna be putting photos of our trip as we go, but it is so huge that they have like so many structures holding up, and you literally fit underneath the bush. That's how huge it is. And it's a white rose bush, although it only blooms in April. So we were not there for the bloom, but it just felt like really sacred to be in the presence of it. And then they have in that hotel now, it's more of like a museum. So you kind of walk through, and as we're walking through, they have these cases. And in this one case, I see this like mask that's made out of iron. Like, I don't know if you guys ever saw the Man in the Mask or the Iron Mask or something. It's like that. It has like this thing that sits on the top of the head, and it goes over the nose and the mouth. And underneath it, it says that this is what they used to keep women in their place and keep them from gossiping or talking too much. And I'm just looking at this thing and thinking, how in this place that holds the most beauty of this rose also holds the density of how women were treated. You know, like I have never seen anything like this in my life. And it was such a stark contrast that I felt like, isn't it interesting that both of these things were created in a time that, long ago, but the bush, the rose is what survived. And this relic is in a case, and it's like people looking at it like, holy crap, like how were women treated, literally like cattle. And it made me feel like I'm grateful that the rose is the one that survived. So after we leave that museum, we're walking down the town street, and Richard's like, hey, let's get some ice cream. But it was like still morning, and I was like, let's go see what kind of ice cream they have. And inside, it wasn't homemade ice cream. So to me, I was like, it's too early. I'm not really interested. But I turn around, and there's this case there, there's a boutique, but not really a boutique, but like things for sale. And on the top shelf of this cabinet or this case is a belt buckle that is for the Freemasons. And this time is the second wink. And I say to Richard, look at that. And we're looking, and there's like a few of them. There's like they're for sale. It's like they're newly manufactured. And there's like, I think 3. And I'm like, that is so strange that they would sell that here, and then it makes me think like again about the building that we just passed. So I'm kind of putting that in the back of my mind. And this is how, to me, these trips are now that I understand. When the winks start coming, I'm like, it doesn't make sense in the now space. So I know they're there, and I'm just going to like rest for a minute and let's keep moving forward. So we get the next stop on the trip is this town called Truth or Consequence. And I'm asking Richard, like, how did they come up with this name? And he said, well, New Mexico historically is one of the most impoverished states. And the game show Truth or Consequence, I think it was back in the 70s, put up this thing that whoever changed the first city that legally changed their name to Truth or Consequences were going to get some kind of reward or money or whatever. And this town is the one that did it. So now it's called Truth or Consequences. But in Truth or Consequences is the hot springs. And Richard was like, I think we should, it is like amazing to me. He doesn't consciously know he's doing this, but he says to me that morning, we're going to be going through Truth or Consequence. And I've been there before, and let's look for a private hot tub. And they're right on the river. And I was like, what? Does this, I've never been there, so I don't know what's there. So I found one for us at sunset, and we get there, and it is so beautiful. Like we have this huge kind of outdoor oasis to ourselves with our own pool, and the water was 104 degrees, and it is just gorgeous. And on top of that, if you get too hot, they had a thing that you could pull, and a cold shower would come down on top of you while you're in the hot water. And you're just like sitting there watching the river go by, and there were ducks and birds, and then this wind would come in, and it was just so beautiful. And then I think, why? Because at one point, Richard was like, okay, I'm done, and I'm going to go take a shower, and I'll meet you outside. And I'm sitting there thinking, again, nothing is by coincidence. And hot springs to me represent water, obviously, and the nourishment of the planet for us because we're actually sitting in it. And so I start to tune into, well, what is this land about? And think about this, like when the Native American people were, the only ones here, I was thinking that's because I hate cold water, but for them to take showers or baths, it was mainly in cold water. So in the winters, they would need warm water, right? So they would gather around the hot springs areas. So I'm like, feeling into that. And then I have on my phone a GPS app, and I'm going to get to why in a little bit, but I bet you it's on the 33rd parallel. And I pull up my phone, and sure enough, it is. Now, I'm going to just pause here to say that the reason I have been watching for the signs of the 33rd parallel is we live at 32.85. That's where our land is, on 32.85. This came into my experience or, my life when I first did my first grounding in Joshua Tree, and I met my sister Leia, and she told me about the 33rd parallel, and that sent me down this deep rabbit hole to understand what this is about and why do I live on it or very close to it. So they say that the 33rd, the actual point of 33rd, it's like half a degree point on each side of it, so it would be 32.5 to 33.5, that span. And it's only, I think, like 60 miles or something of span is part of that vortex. And I think eventually I will do an episode about the 33rd parallel, but for now, I don't know. It hasn't all dropped in yet, but I know that it is a very sacred energy and has been used over time for both positive and negative. And what I feel, especially when we moved here, okay, San Diego is also close to the 33rd, but it's further away than where we are now. And when we moved here, I knew this land is sacred. I mean, you guys know, I've talked about that, like I knew it. Well, it is, and it's been protected, but it's also in this belt of energy that, again, I just will say that in the whole planet, they say that the 33rd North Parallel is the source of energy for the entire planet. So when I am in this hot spring and I look down at my phone and it is the 33rd parallel, I was like, okay. And Richard had left by that point, so I just sat with that energy and just like, we can have experiences, but to just deeply be in resonance with what the water wants to talk to us about and wants to nurture us with, I just wanted to experience that. And at this point, I didn't understand, like consciously. I knew in my body that something is happening here and I'm here to absorb and soak in what it is, but I don't consciously yet have all the pieces together. So yes, that's what happened there. Then we move on to Albuquerque, and Richard is a huge Breaking Bad fan, and he wanted to show me he's already been there and done all the things, but he wanted to show me, what is it called? the chicken shop, or the Los Polos Hermanos. And so we went there, and he showed me some other things, and then we got to the balloon festival, and parked the van, and we start we brought our bikes, so we start riding around town, and it was a beautiful day. And we got there in the afternoon, so the sessions of the balloons were already down for the day. So then the first experience we had with the balloons, I'm going to back it up. So that day we went to the Balloon Festival Museum, and learned a lot about balloons. And it's a sport, and it is a huge big deal for a lot of people. But I'm gonna insert some videos that I was playing with the energies at the museum. But I felt really light, and it was a really beautiful vibe. So the first session the next morning they call it Dawn Patrol, and it starts if you aren't staying on site, you have to start getting in there at 3 a.m. But because our van is literally parked right in front of the gate to get in, we just got rolled out of bed and walked over there. And it is so fantastic because they basically send up these balloons in the dark so that can be the wind gauge, and so all the other pilots, which they are pilots, know what's going to happen and what to prepare for their takeoff. And it's just pitch black, and the fire in the air, the balloons going up, and it's just magic. So then the sun rises, and we're walking around, and I'm telling you, there's hundreds of these balloons, and it's crazy. But one of them at this point stood out to me, and it was this one called Meow Wolf. And I didn't know why. I was I've heard that word before, those words together before, but I don't remember where. And I know, but it was another wink, and I was why? And I didn't even say anything to Richard because I was just looking at it huh? And then, let's see what happened. Okay, then the next day, I have so many notes, you guys, so bear with me. The next day, so that day we just hung out and enjoyed the balloons and whatnot. Then the next day was our anniversary, which is 10/10, and we got up in the morning with the balloon patrol, and same thing. We experienced all the balloons, and it's imagine a carnival, and they have all the food, all the shops, all the things. So you just kind of walk around, and you can get right on the field and see these balloons up close and whatnot. But that day, we decided to go to the downtown area and just, walk around. And we're walking around. Richard wanted to stop at the Breaking Bad shop, and he got a bunch of things for his coworkers. But, we were going in shops, and nothing was calling out to me. And then we turned this corner, and on the ground, there's maybe, 6 or 7 vendors selling their jewelry. And they didn't have physical stores. There's just this area where people could lay out their jewelry and, sell it directly there on the sidewalk. And this one vendor just stood out to me. His energy, his jewelry, just everything, I went right to him. And it wasn't that I was looking for anything, but right when I saw him and his jewelry, and he started telling me how he makes them, and I felt like I needed a piece of turquoise. And so I end up getting this ring, which you guys can see here. And, Richard's oh yeah, get it. That's, it's our anniversary, whatever. So, I get it, and we walk away. And, before we walk away, I look at he's wearing a ring, and it's on his pointer finger. And I said, what size is that ring? And he goes, oh, it's huge. It's a 13, and it's not for sale. And I was oh, because the stone in it is mesmerizing. And he goes, yeah, because it's from the Sleeping Beauty mine, and this turquoise is pure turquoise. And I said, what's the difference? And he goes, well, you see how yours is it's harder, and it has there's filler in it to keep it it's structurally sound. Sleeping Beauty is the soft form of turquoise, and so it has like divots and bumps in it, and it's not well, he said it's very rare. He only got one like chunk of it, so he's only made this one ring that he has. And I'm like, wow, so it's priceless. And he was like, basically. So we walk away. I'm just telling him how beautiful it is, but we walk away, and maybe we get like to the end of that block, and Richard goes, I think I might want a bracelet. And I was like, what? Because Richard is not a jewelry person. Granted, on his trip that he took across the United States recently, he did wear his tiger's eye. But other than that, he really is not a jewelry person. So I was like, you think you want one? And he was like, I think I do. And I was like, let's go back to the guy that I got the ring from then. I mean, I didn't even look to see if he had bracelets. You know, I was just honed in on the rings. So Richard's like, well, let's see what the other ones have too. So as we're walking back, we're looking at the other ones, and they're all like very traditional bracelets. And I'm like, I mean, they're nice, but I said, let's go back to him. I said, I really liked his energy. I think we should go back to him. So we get back there, and I look just right next to where the rings were are 3 bracelets. And I grab one, and Richard put it on, and it's the most beautiful bracelet. It's like a cuff, and the turquoise is on. There's 2 points of turquoise on each side of the cuff. And it's the Sleeping Beauty stone. And I look at him at the vendor, and he's like, oh yeah, that when I got my chunk, so now we're continuing the conversation. He goes, when I got the chunk to make this ring, I had enough to make a few bracelets. They weren't big enough for rings, but that's why I have this. And I was like, oh. And then on the bracelet itself, there's like these inscribed figures, or not figures, symbols. And I asked him what that meant, and he said it's for divine protection, knowledge, health, and safety, and something else. And I was like, and so I'm just waiting because I don't want to influence Richard and like force him to get something that he's never going to wear. But he puts it on, and it's like the perfect fit. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So he gets the bracelet. And then we go back to the van, and I was like, I think it might have been right before I went to bed or in kind of sleep state, dream state. I got the download that this turquoise, this vendor, why I felt him, was not for me. It was for Richard and that bracelet. That bracelet was trying to find its way to Richard for protection. And I was like, well, what about my ring? You know? And they were saying like, that's, you know, it's a stone to help you, but the real reason that you tuned into this man was for that Sleeping Beauty bracelet. And I was like, interesting. So I wonder if he'll keep wearing it. So I didn't tell him because I thought, you know, let's see. Because, you know, sometimes you buy things and you just take it off right away. And I didn't know what he was going to be doing. So then the next day, so that happened on our anniversary. And it felt really like synchronistic, I'll say that. And then the next day we get up again for dawn patrol, and we do the balloons situation. And then we decide we're going to go to Santa Fe for the day and then come back at night. And, you know, we pack up and the van's on and we're ready to pull out of our spot in the campground. And this guy walks up. I mean, he works there for the festival. And he walks up and he's on Richard's side, and he kind of puts his arms like halfway in the van. So he's not going anywhere. It's not like we can be like, hey, you know, and keep moving. He wants to chat. So he starts telling us how he's one of the bomb specialists that are, you know, there for the festival. And then he goes into this whole story about how they do it. And basically like, they know who has radiation on them before they even need to go up to a person, because they can, they have all these sensors. They wear these backpacks that, you know, alert them to tell them like, this is the area and blah, 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 blah. So he's going on and telling us, and And there, he said there's never been any issues with bombs at the balloon festival, but any place that there's big gatherings, they deploy these people. So we're like, and it's going on like 10 minutes that he's talking. And I finally say, well, we're going to and he goes, I said, we're going to go. And he goes, where are you guys going? And I said, we're going to Santa Fe for the day. And he's like, oh, are you going to Meow Wolf? And I was like, wait, what? Because remember, I had already gotten the wink for Meow Wolf and I didn't know what it was and I didn't take the time to look it up. So he's like, yeah, it's like the biggest thing in Santa Fe. And I was like, interesting. He's like, I don't really know much about it, but definitely you guys should go. And I was like, okay. So I get on my phone and I find, yes, I got us tickets. So we leave and we go to Santa Fe, and the first thing we found is, he also told us about this little chapel that has this miraculous spiral staircase. And we go to that first, and it's this staircase, I think that it was built in like the 1600s. It was this all girls chapel, and the way it used to work is the chorus would be on the what would we call that, like the balcony area, and the chapel is small that they wouldn't want to put in a stair, so people would use ladders to get up to the rafters, let's say, or the balcony. But this was an all-girls school, so the nuns were in these huge heavy robes and they were having troubles getting up and down on the ladder. And they decided, let's pray to Saint Joseph, because he's the saint of carpenters. And they prayed for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, a man showed up on their doorstep and said, I'm here to build you a staircase. And they were like, okay. So they let him in, and he said he needed 3 months. And, he had it like he was building, and they weren't paying attention or how he was building it or whatnot. But the day that he finished it, he left before they could pay him. And when in closer inspection on the spiral staircase, there was no nails, no support structure, nothing holding that thing up. And it has 2 full rotations of a spiral staircase and 33 stairs. And the nuns were like, oh my gosh. And so basically, I have goosebumps. Basically, this staircase, they don't know who built it. They never saw the man again. He didn't collect his pay for it. And it is standing there with not a nail in it. And you can't go up it. Like, you just can look at it. But it was amazing to see. And then we had also gotten tickets for the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. And this came up about 2 weeks before we left. I was actually it was the day of the equinox. I was like thinking I wanted to make an altar, and I was looking for flowers and thinking like, okay, I'm going to go to where I walk the dogs and I'll get flowers and berries and things there. And then I noticed this plant started growing right on our driveway, or it looked like a bush. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll pick up some flowers from that bush. But I had gone to the field, and by the time I got home, I had enough flowers and I totally forgot about it. So then when Richard got home from his trip, I showed him, I said, did you see these flowers that are growing here? And he goes, those are the sacred flowers that we learned about when we were at the national, or I think they're called the National Monuments in, I think it's in Nevada. I always get this wrong. I'm the worst at this stuff, you guys, but they're the most sacred monuments in Monument Valley. That's what it's called. And I was like, what? I don't remember that. And he goes, yeah, they told us that these flowers are what the indigenous people used to use as like hallucinogens. And I was like, I don't remember. So of course I take a picture and I Google that, and I'm looking, and it's called Sacred Datura. Has a few other names like moonflower, belladonna, and I think those are the ones I remember right now. And I'm like, where did it come from? I've never seen it before. Am I, what am I supposed to do with it? So in my research, I found that it is toxic, and unless you really know what you're doing, you really shouldn't even touch it. Which, think about this, I was going to totally go and gather it for my altar, which it had slipped my mind and I never touched it. But they say even touching the leaves of this flower, it can get into the system and it can kill you. So I'm like, well, then why is it here? Am I supposed to learn about it? And I go down this rabbit hole of like really trying to understand. And of course, as I'm going down the rabbit hole, guess who's painted this sacred flower over and over and over? Georgia O'Keeffe. And I knew that we were going to Santa Fe and New Mexico. And so that's why we had gotten tickets to go see Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings. And, I don't think about this, and this, I don't know the answer, but was she out there in the desert imbibing the sacred datura? Because why did she paint it over and over and over? And as I was going through the museum, there's a lot of literature around how she became the painter that she became. And it was like stopping and taking the time to really look at a flower. And that's why when you look at her paintings, it's not just like a bouquet of flowers. No, she goes deep into one flower, and she had this little magnifying glass that she would put, it had this display of shells underneath it, and she would dissect whatever she was painting to the nth detail so that she could say stop and look at this beauty, right? So yeah, I thought that was a very cool little wink that we were able to go see her painting and the sacred daturas at the same time were coming in for us. But then, funny, I started talking to the girls in the circle, and it turned out that there were 2 or 3 others that also had started seeing these sacred daturas on their land or while they were walking. And one of them even planted it on her property right at the time that I found it on my land. So I think this vibe was coming through. And so then I was like, well, why though? Why is it coming up? So then I found out that if you aren't imbibing it, which I'm not going to, it is for protection. And then I was talking to one of my friends about it, and she said, well, is it in view of your driveway, like where people would have to go past it to come to your house? And I said, yeah, you can see it from the street. So I took it as it was this guardian plant that was protecting us from some energy at that time. Now, when we got home from our trip, the gardener had weed whacked the entire thing, so it's gone. And I said to Richard, oh, it's gone. And he said, that's good. I don't want any animals to get sick from it. And I'm like, okay. So then next was Meow Wolf. Now, this is an experience in itself. And still at this point, remember, I knew I had heard of it, but I didn't know where yet. And so I had the wink of the balloon, and then the man that told us, you guys need to go do this. But I didn't know where it originated from, because remember, I had something was there, the words were there in my vocabulary. I knew something about it. And so we didn't Google anything. We didn't know what we're getting into. We just decided to go in. And it is, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but I'm going to first say that the original one is in Santa Fe, and it's owned by the creator of Game of Thrones. Purchased this bowling alley that is 20,000 square feet, and he basically gave it to these local artists, and I think there are 180 local artists that created this experience that basically you check your mind at the door, and just people have called it a psychedelic experience. It is imagine all of your senses on steroids and moving so fast, and every space is covered and every inch is like a story, and you have to completely leave who you think you are behind in order to survive this. Now, it's not scary. There's nothing inappropriate. So there were age ranges from little kids to older people, and everybody was enjoying it. But it's a lot of energy, because you're just I don't even know where to begin with this. But so we're I'm just going to say this. You first walk in and you go into this house where I guess there was a a mystery. And if you want to play this game, you can figure out the clues and understand the game part of it. But we're like, because they say you don't have to do that, but you can if you want to. So we walk into the kitchen, and there is the refrigerator door opens, and it's you see, you can get into the refrigerator, and it goes somewhere else. And so we're like, all right, let's go. Well, we step into that refrigerator, and I don't know what happened to the house. I don't know. It ends up being 2 hours that we're in this 1,000 square foot space. And every door leads to another, to another, to another. And every single room is a totally different experience. And imagine installation art, but you are part of the art. That's basically, if I had to distill it down to this experience. And you have to let go of where you think normal things would be. Like, for example, there's a little slide that goes into you open up a washing machine door, and there's a slide to go in, and you're like, do I want to get in that? It's an assault to the senses, but in the most creative way. So we're in there, and a couple of times we have to sit down and kind of catch our breath, because it's just so much. You're just like, what? And we get to this one cave where you have to crawl in, and you lay on the ground and you look up, and it's this dome ceiling. And in this dome ceiling, there's all of these lights, eyes that start lighting up. And there's probably, I don't even know, 50 eyes. And I'm like, oh, they've definitely done ayahuasca, because when I do ayahuasca, I see so many eyes looking at me and blinking at me. And I'm like, oh my God, this is totally what it feels like. And then there's sounds with it. It's just amazing. So as we're moving through this, there's an underwater one. It's just all over the place. And we get to this one, and we've been in there maybe an hour and a half at this point. And there's a table in the center of the room and one chair behind the table. And I immediately go and sit down. And there's a lot of people there, but I don't know. No one was sitting there. I sat down. And this light display and sounds and start projecting all around the room. And it's in this moment, it's talking to me. This is what's happening. In my mind, I'm like, oh, this is why you came. And it's talking about how the body and the soul are here to combine as one. And it's about 10 minutes long. I can't even comprehend and tell you all the things that it was talking to me about, but I was sitting there thinking, this is why you're here. And then I'm like, oh my God, I have to share this. So I grab my phone, and I'm holding it as I'm watching, and just imagine someone inside of your head seeing exactly where you are in your experience, and projecting it in front of you and talking to you and helping you understand and how to get through it. That's essentially what happened. And I'm like, oh my God. And people are coming and going, and I hear kids behind me, and I'm just oh, and I looked at the end of it. I looked down, and it says, nothing. I didn't record anything. And I'm like, wait, what? And then I'm like, well, I'll just sit here and record it from the beginning again. Well, the next one it turns on again, but it's a totally different story. It's not my story. It's not my message. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm just I was feeling so humbled, because here's the thing. That man that worked at the balloon festival, he didn't know why he was talking to us. He was trying to, it's spirit works through people in ways that they don't understand. And I didn't understand in that moment too, because here I am being like, okay, dude, we've been talking to you for 10 minutes. We got to go. And he was trying, he wouldn't. His arms were in the van. He wasn't going to just let up that easily. And it wasn't until he felt complete with what his message was, which was, go to Meow Wolf. And then I remembered, where did I hear Meow Wolf? The first time I heard it was about 3 weeks ago. A friend of mine had a dream about another friend, and she saw her doing something called Arcadia. And she said, I don't know what it means, but I think it was, she created a business called Arcadia. And I was in the midst of this conversation, and I said, I know two things that are called Arcadia. One is in Costa Rica, there's an ayahuasca retreat center. And then also that new festival that Aubrey Marcus is putting on, I think is called Arcadia. So that day I had gone to that website, and on that website it says it's next to Meow Wolf. And I didn't look what is Meow Wolf because I was like, I don't care, I'm not going, so who cares? But that's where the seed was planted. And then I saw the balloon, and then the guy came in and cemented it. So this is what I found. When your path is trying to get you to something, at least in my case, it'll be 3 signs. And the third sign, it's like, oh, I know for certain this is what I'm supposed to do. So then I was like, oh my God, that man was a messenger. And I was so impatient sitting there waiting for him to get to the message. And then I told Richard, babe, we came for this. This was the reason. And he's like, what? And I'm like, no, really, this. And he didn't even stay in the room with me to listen to it. He kind of with everyone else, no one sat down except for me. Everybody else was just walking through it. No one had the knowing that it was for them. So they just passed it through all the other rooms. It's just this total assault. So you're just let me get to the next experience. But no, that was the message for me. So then at the very end, which for some reason I look at my phone the next day, and it captured one little bit of this message, and it's 10 seconds of recording, and it says, together as one.
All time is eternal. As soon as wakes an eye, only the wake and dream. And just like that,
we are back together as one.
And that's the end message for this whole 10 minutes of them talking about how I'm supposed to be united with every part of me now. And I'm like, okay. I know you guys, this is crazy. Okay, so then at the very end, we're sitting on, we take another break. After this experience, we sit down on this couch, and this woman comes over to us, and she's looking around me, and I said, did you lose something? And she said, my glasses. And I said, oh, but she goes, but don't get up. I don't want you to get up. I don't want you to look for them. But she continues to look behind me, and I'm like, wait, what? How can I not get up? So I'm like, no, let me help you. And we start looking, and we can't find them. And as she walks away, Richard goes, the glasses are on her face. And I was like, they are? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, wow, you see what this experience does to you? You don't even know if you're coming or going. And I said, that happened to me in that exhibition. I thought I was recording the entire time, thinking this is life-changing, and I looked down and it didn't record anything except for the last 10 seconds, which I didn't even know. And he started laughing at me. So we decided, okay, we're gonna go. And here's the thing. We spent 2 hours in this maze of amazingness, and I don't think we saw it all. I know that you can go way deeper. There's a mystery game you can play. It is the most fantastic art thing I've ever experienced in my life, but they only have, the original one is in Santa Fe. They made duplicates of it in Las Vegas. I think there's one in Texas and one in Colorado. And right now, that's the only places they are. If you're in any of those states, run to this experience. Okay, so we get into this gift shop. And right away, I'm drawn to this. And I'm going to read it to you guys. It says, advice from a vortex. Rip through time and space. Enter the spiral. Transport into the unknown. Join the orbit, be the energy, engage the greater, converge chaos, Meow Wolf. And I'm like, yes! So I'm holding this plaque and walking around the room and this is mine, and it is perfect. And Richard comes up to me and he goes, you hold this sign. Don't look at the sign, but I want to take a picture of you holding this sign. So here I am holding my vortex plaque and holding this sign that Richard wants me to hold. And I'm like, whatever. I don't care what it says. I'm just smiling. And then I look at it and it says, we're high. So yes, I think that the Meow Wolf creators were definitely vibing with the plant medicines to make this experience come to life. And here's the thing. Not everyone is brave enough or ready to do plant medicine, but if you want to know the experience, go to Meow Wolf and you will get the full picture of what your psyche looks like on the outside. It's amazing. Okay, so we go back to Albuquerque, and the next morning after the dawn patrol and the balloons, it ends up that day it's really windy, so no balloons take off. So it's like they blow up the field with the balloons, and you can just walk around and talk to everybody and whatnot. And this is the last day, and in this last day I see this balloon that looks like G, and if you're on YouTube I'm gonna share it here. And I just had this beautiful wink from her and was just so happy to see her there. So then we decide we're going to get back in the car and we're going to start our way home, but we're going to go through Roswell. So Richard had been to Roswell before, I had not. And he's like, yeah, you got to check it out. It's pretty crazy. I'm like, okay. So we head down to Roswell. And like, as soon as I know we're going, I'm looking online to see if there's any tours. And when Richard was there, he was there during COVID, and there were no tourists other than him. And the guy that ran the tours just brought him alone to all the sites that day. Well, it turns out that man has since retired, and another guy is running tours now. And on the website, it shows that they're fully booked. I called him and he's like, yeah, come anyway. There's one leaving at 3. And if, sometimes people don't show up, and maybe I can get you guys in and whatnot. So I'm like, cool. So we get there, we go to the museum, the alien museum, and we walked around a little bit, and here's what happened. So Richard's deeply into antique shops, and mainly he's looking for like antique motorcycle things, because he's collecting, mainly Harley vintage motorcycles. And so he's looking for, like, I don't know, plaques or who knows what. But we get into this antique shop, and right away I knew I protected myself. As we stepped through the door, I put my shield around myself, mainly because when you're in energy that has like all of these histories with them, these trinkets, these clothes, these all whatever, it's like a bombardment to the system. And I knew that, because I don't really go to antique shops because of this reason. It's just way overwhelming for me. So it's this huge shop. So I put energy around me, and I'm like, I won't feel any of this unless I'm meant to. So we're walking around, and it has like different stalls and stuff. And maybe like halfway through, I look down into this case and I see this ashtray. And the ashtray says to me, you need to take me home with you. And I'm like, wait, what? Because the cabinet is locked. And this place is huge. I have to go find someone for a key. And I'm like, really? And it says it's a Masonic ashtray. And here it is. And I'm like, wait, why do I need to take that home with me? And I I tell Richard, I think I'm supposed to take that home. And he goes, why? And I said, I think so that no one else takes it. And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm supposed to bury it. I don't know. It's just telling me I'm supposed to take it with me. And he's like, are you sure? And he's like, so he kind of walks away. And I'm like, maybe I'm not sure. So then I decide I'm going to text Anita and see what she says. And she's like, oh, I'm not able to read it, objects. But if it's telling you to take that you need it, then I think you should get it. So I was like, oh, okay. So I go stand in line at the desk, and there's like a lot of people there. And finally it's my turn. And I tell the guy, there's something that I want over in this cabinet over there. And he follows me with the key, and I buy it. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know why. I don't know. I know, look, here's the thing. It's the third wink. The Masons were coming back in again for the third time on this trip, and I knew. I don't know why, but I'm supposed to get this relic, this thing. So I did a little research on this. It's from the Order of the Eastern Star. which is it was a fraternity that was created. Oh shoot, I lost the page that I had on it. It was a fraternity of the Freemasons. It was created, long ago, and the symbols of this OES are white robes, which were the primary attire worn by members of the OES as a white robe. The white signifies purity and the pursuit of truth, enlightenment, alignment with the organization's emphasis on moral and ethical values. The colors represent blue is the prominent color, and it represents fidelity, consistency, and faithfulness. The red symbolizes love, courage, and devotion. The green symbolizes hope, immorality, and enduring spirit. Yellow signifies wisdom and the pursuit of knowledge. White, as mentioned earlier, is the purity and truth. Now, here's the thing. These items are often featured with an emblem of the order, which consists of a 5-pointed star and the letters OES at the points and central pentagon, with the letters FATAL, which symbolize faith, adoration, trust, altruism, and loyalty. Now here, I don't know, I got a very clear message that I was supposed to take this and buy this ashtray. Now, my initial feeling was I don't know anything really about the Masons, but I have always associated it with as like a darker energy. So my initial reaction was I'm supposed to take it so no one else can use this energy. And maybe I'll bury it. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to hold it on my altar to hold space for it. I don't know. But as I was preparing for this episode, I'm like, I don't know if that energy is calling to me. I don't know yet, but it definitely wanted to be with me, and I'm TBD on that one. We'll see. So then I'm going to say overall my experience. Oh wait, so we leave that shop and we go over to the tour shop, and turns out everybody shows up and there is no room for us on this tour because they have like a bus and they have a certain number of seats and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, I knew going into it, if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But I already knew, being in Roswell, because we had been there for a couple hours, it's not what I thought. And I'm going to just say that I'm not saying that there is an energy there. And guess what parallel it's on? It is on the 33rd parallel. There is energy there. But I do think that, this is what I said to Richard, I feel like going and looking at these sites where things were found, or, it's like looking at a graveyard, because that energy is not, it's like people are trying to relive things through it, and it's dead. That energy is not there, but there is something else going on there. And I said, I've never seen a UFO. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but my understanding of energy is that would they need matter? And while we were walking through the museum, I did get some kind of download that was like, okay, if energy travels in a Merkaba or an energy vessel, when it hits our atmosphere, would it turn into matter? And could that be the explanation for this? And, my feeling personally is I don't feel that, but I also could feel there is something happening. And it was like not an energy that I wanted to be a part of, I guess is, how I would describe it. So when that tour thing didn't happen, I was like, good. Or, not good, just like, okay, it's not, I knew I was picking up on that, but I just wanted to confirm we're not meant to go on this tour. And the thing is we had a backup of the next place we were going to go if we didn't get the tour, because the tour was going to be like 2 hours long, and, it would have been nighttime after that. So I'm like, okay, let's go. And so our next stop was going to be White Sands National Park. And again, I have never been there. Richard had been there. And he's like, oh yeah, that's on our way home anyway. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So we go to lunch and then we go to the White Sands National Park. And the moment we get on this land, I'm like, it felt like another planet. It feels like you're on the moon. And we were trying to make it there for sunset, but the sun had just gone down over the mountains as we pull up into the national park. But it's still light out, we can see. And it felt like we're entering a different time-space reality. Now, I'm going to say that for me on this entire trip, this part of the trip, so many things opened up and went down. Richard told me that this White Sands National Park is only, I think it's a fourth of the whole White Sands dunes. White Sand Dunes. The rest is owned by the military, and it is where the very first atomic bomb test went off. You can do research and find out that it is still owned by the military. I think there's I don't know. I think they say 9 tests happen per day on their side of the dunes. I asked Richard, is there radioactivity in the area? And he said, no, obviously they wouldn't open it up to the public, but he also mentioned that it had been a national monument until 2019. President Trump made it a national park. And there was some negotiation that happened in order for that to happen. The military took over more of the land and made it the park smaller, basically. So I'm like, interesting that Trump would care to make a park. I wonder what that's about. And he's like, well, it probably is for the military. There was a negotiation. They wanted more privacy. And I was like, interesting. And Richard is not into conspiracies in any way. But I'm like, okay. So we get there, we get out of the van, and first thing that I notice is I'm wearing sandals, and the sand, even though the sun has just set, is cool. It's not hot in any way. And as you're walking up the dunes, it's not like you're sinking in sand. It's like maybe you sink down just a fraction of an inch, but it's solid. You can walk up the dunes but at the same time it's super windy, so it's blowing, and it's just amazing. And what I felt is I need to lay down. And so I lay down on the sand, and I start making snow angels, and I just wanted to stay there. It felt like this this calm went over my whole body, and I in a way felt peaceful and just serene and surrendered. And I just laid there. And then Richard's like, okay, let's keep going, because you kind of drive around the park. And I said, isn't it interesting? We went to the sand dunes in Colorado, and those sand dunes were amazing too, but totally different sand. It was real sand where you sunk into it. And I said, did you notice that this sand is not like that? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, how come it's so white? So then I start looking on my phone, and it turns out the sand is made of gypsum, solid gypsum, which is selenite, which has more structure, and it's literally crystal snow. And I'm like, oh. And then I got the download. This is a catalyst. And I was like, okay. Now, I may or may not have taken some with me. And I in a way, kind of right now, I'm speechless, because I didn't know as we were there how it was going to affect me in a bigger way. So, we're driving through, and it starts to get dark, and now it's we can't see at all. So we leave the park, and right as we leave the park, I get nauseous, and I'm I do get car sick sometimes, but we hadn't been making any turns, there was no reason for me to get car sick. And the nearest gas station was 30 minutes away. And I'm just like trying to hold it in. And the moment he stops, I'm running to the bathroom and I threw up everything. Like, I mean, just heaving and getting it all out. And he's like, what happened? And he's like, we ate the same thing. Are you okay? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm like, I couldn't stand. I just felt like, ugh, so nauseous. So we get back in the van and we had to drive like maybe 30 more minutes to get to the site that we were going to stay in for the night. And I try to throw up again. And I'm like just dry heaving now because everything's out of my system. And I just feel like I think I'm green. And I just crawl into the back of the van where the bed is and I just pass out. I get up in the morning. I still feel nauseous, but I go to the bathroom. They have a camp bathroom, and I go to the bathroom and I'm bleeding. And you guys know I've already started perimenopause. My last period was about 4 or 5 months ago. And so I'm kind of surprised. And I'm like, okay, prior to me having fewer and fewer periods, I would only get my period during ayahuasca. And so this happening after this experience of throwing up and being at the white sand dunes, I'm like, something's going on here. So I get back to the van and I look at my phone and I open up Facebook, and the first post I see is in the Ley Lines chat group. And someone had posted, basically, when you go to sacred sites, these are the things that you should and could expect to happen to you. And of course, one of them is throwing up, because it's like the energy's trying to integrate into the system. Now, as I know energy, you have to empty the chalice in order to receive. And did I empty? I was empty completely of food, and then my whole womb shed. And I'm talking like heavily shed, everything gone. And then for the next about 3 or 4 days, even today, I still feel nauseous. It's like a whole new energy came in. And I, of course, guess what? This white sands is also on the 33rd parallel. Now I'm starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but here's what I think. I think there is a lot of activity over in that area. The White Sand Dunes was about an hour's drive from Roswell, and it's on the same parallel. Like, it's just one highway, straight line to get there. I think that there's a lot happening on the military side of the White Sand Dunes, and I do think that there are a lot of energies in that area. But let's say, again, with the 33rd parallel, people harness that energy for both positive and negative. Now, I'm not saying the military is doing negative things, but what I'm saying is that in the middle of this desert, there's one area, and I'm going to show you guys, that is all white crystal, and everybody wants on that spot and wants to amplify tests on that spot. It is, for me, the most intense experience that I've ever had in the grid work that I do. I remember a couple years ago, Richard had gotten this knowing from a friend about this mountain called Glitter Mountain. And Glitter Mountain is also full of gypsum, but it's chunks of gypsum. And I actually still have some of it from that mountain. I didn't have the same feeling. That was was that in Utah, I think? I didn't feel what I felt at this place. This place was like a full-blown integration, and also remembering. And then I remember, like, we used to gather there. It was a very sacred site. It is very just holy. It is the only place in the world that has this white selenite sand, and it is on the 33rd parallel. So I'm gonna stop here. This has already gotten really long, but I want you guys to know I hope to do an episode about the 33rd parallel and help you understand what's happening there. But if you do any Googling, you will start to see what I'm talking about. All around, like imagine the globe, and it goes all the way around the globe. All across the world, people are harnessing that energy. And I believe that we have been placed on it as well to bring in the light. Like, I know I'm one of those acupuncture points of energy that's flowing through me. And most of the time I'm not conscious of it, but being in this vortex where it is heightened for a lot of people using it in and out of that gypsum or that selenite, my whole system just shut down. And it was intense. I'm trying to put into words what is unwordable. I don't know how else to describe it. I hope that the photos can do better justice than I can, but it is the most holy sight I've ever experienced. And to me, if you're going to New Mexico, forget Roswell. That's like the nothing. It's at White Sands, and we didn't see any craft, but I felt quite a bit. So thank you guys for being on this grid working journey with me, and I will see you next time.